Hello, everybody. Randy Patterson here with Boomerosity. As you know, I love finding those unheard of gems, musically speaking, of course, or those that are just coming up and beginning to be known. And this is the case with Kevin Gullickson and his group, Radio Drive. I hadn't heard about him until his publicist got hold of me, and I listened to his work, and I really like it. If you like the 70s and 80s style of music, which I'm sure you do, or you wouldn't be tuning into Boomerosity, then you're going to absolutely love Kevin's work here. If you like Beatles, if you like Zeppelin, if you like especially U2, you're really going to love Radio Drive and Kevin Gullickson's work in it. We had a really good chat. I really love the spirit of Kevin and where his heart is musically and where his heart is towards the world. So we had a wonderful chat. I feel like I've made a new friend too. And I can't wait for you guys to listen to this interview and to please go check out his music. I'll have links to where you can get it all. It's all in all the streaming services, but I encourage you to buy the music and help support artists like Kevin. So I'll have the links on this page that you can click on and order and visit his website and check out what all he's got going on. So without any further ado, here is the first Boomerosity interview with Kevin Gullickson of Radio Drive. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerosity. Take care. Where are you dialing in from?
I'm in a suburb of St. Paul, Minnesota called Lakeville.
Okay. I've been to Minneapolis one time, a long time ago, but I was there on a business meeting, one of my day jobs years gone by. And nice. So I didn't get to see much of it, but I did see Mall of America. I do know that. So
there you go. Yeah. I refer to it as my wife's Mecca. No, we love that place. We used to go all the time. When the kids were younger, they had this Toddler Tuesday. And all kinds of places had, buy one, get one free and just fun events and things. And you never know what you're going to run into out there. I remember I didn't know this was happening, but we go out there and there's Black Sabbath set up in this atrium signing autographs. And
wow.
I remember one time seeing Julian Lennon doing an acoustic set. What a treat. Just all for free. And other bands have come through and played in the atrium. A lot of book signings happening there. So yeah, you never know what you're going to run into out there.
Gosh, I'm thinking that had to be, I think it's been 28 years, almost 30 years since I've been there. But,
oh, wow.
It's been a while. So
yeah. It's an amazing place, always changing. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, malls are kind of on, they're fighting for their survival these days. I imagine that one's really having to fight because of how massive it is. And it's an interesting place. I can't remember the statistics, how many visitors come every year, but it's just something like crazy over the top. Now, this was pre-COVID, so I don't know what it's like now, but man, I can't remember if it had more than like Disneyland or something. Wow.
But it was like right up there,
My goodness. Well, it's kind of like Disneyland in some ways,
Oh, I know it. Yeah. Oh, I know it.
So how did the pandemic affect you, and what are you seeing post-pandemic? How were things during it, and how are things for you now?
Yeah, so the interesting thing, just before the pandemic, I got the band back together again. And it was going to be our first gig in a 5-year hiatus. Kind of a long story there. But so we were rehearsing. We were ready to go. We played in January of 2020. Great show. We were all feeling good. It's like, yeah, let's do this. So I had a lot of gigs lined up for the year, or at least the next few months. And then the pandemic hit. At the time, we didn't know what to expect. Is this going to be a week or 2 weeks? Let's stand by. But then when people saw the impact, it's like, no, we're shut down indefinitely. So the guys kind of all went their own way, and what was social distancing and all. I'm thankful to say I have a studio here at my home. So I was able to just squirrel away and work on music. There's an online music community called Air Gigs, which is super cool. You can connect with musicians around the world and have them play parts on your music. So I connected with a drummer in Italy, a cellist out of Venezuela, a violin out of Russia, backup singer out of Italy. And so as I was recording my songs, I had a lot of time on my hands. So it was a really huge endeavor, biggest project I've ever done, like 13 songs on the album, hired these people, did all the basic mixing, pre-editing kind of stuff here where I mixed all the parts in with mine. And then I sent it out to a fellow named Brendan Decor out in California. Also, I connected through Air Gigs. He won a Grammy working with the Foo Fighters. He's worked with some really big names, so he did the mix and mastering. So that was a huge chunk of time during the pandemic.
I bet.
I did some house concerts, from my home studio, and worked on a whole bunch of videos. So I had a lot going. It was crazy busy. I was looking around your website and came across and watched your interview with Steve Hackett from Genesis. Yeah. Absolutely amazing. I mean, it's like, wow, you've got some really big hitters that you're connecting with. So that made me feel very humbled and honored that you spend the time here with me.
Well, man, you're well established. And to that point, tell Boomerosity viewers a bit about yourself and the band.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been a while. So let me at least start off by telling you about the band, Radio Drive. It was an actual band about, 12, 13 years ago with 4 guys. But I found it hard to keep 4 guys together with the same vision, commitment, direction. It almost seemed like a rotating door where, after 6 months, somebody leaves, we get another replacement, that kind of thing. Finally kind of fell apart. And I thought, I'm going to get better traction just doing this by myself. So I kept the name Radio Drive, kind of like keeping the lights on, in the on the porch in case, anybody comes home. Just in case, a band would form again. But over time, I pretty much, some of my albums, I play all the instruments. But other albums like the one that I just mentioned, I hire musicians to play. I do hire musicians to do live gigs. I kind of have my posse, that I'll reach out to. So it's kind of like the band, but so it's a rather unique arrangement. You could say I'm a solo artist, but you never know. It might form into a band again. But like I say, I'm blessed with the momentum that I've been seeing over the years. And, I'm just moving ahead with that.
If you were to label the genre you are, how would you label it?
Quite simply, I call it alternative pop rock. And I have to use 3 different genres because it's, for me, it's kind of hard to just say I'm this, because I love pop music. I grew up listening to the Monkees and the Beatles. And,
I'm here.
Elvis too. I read your bit on Elvis, and meeting Colonel Tom Parker. Wow. So, Elvis, the Monkees, the Beatles, that pop kind of sound. I love a catchy melody, a catchy guitar riff, a short 3-minute, 30-second song, rock. I used to listen to Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, the heavier sounds of the 70s. Love that kind of stuff. Queen. And alternative, I've always kind of had like a bit of an edge to my music to where it doesn't really fit, into those categories like Foo Fighters. I love the Foo Fighters. They've got some really catchy songs, kind of a little more guitar-driven, grungy kind of thing, but I don't want to go too far that direction, so I kind of stay more somewhere in the pop realm. So, but biggest influences, as I mentioned, the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, U2, Coldplay, and Foo Fighters, I think more recently.
I was listening through a bunch of your music as I was doing some other work, actually, and just kind of getting familiar with your sound and such. And
Yeah,
because
good.
I wouldn't have heard of you if it wasn't for Olivia turning me on to you. So
Yeah.
there was one song, and I failed to write it down. I did write down the label or name of one song that I want to ask you about in a couple more questions. But there was one song on there I thought, I'll be dang, that sounds a lot like you two. It had that driving Bono, vibe to it, and Edge and all that. So, I mean, I'm very impressed with the amalgam that you have there of styles, because not everybody can do that and do it well and do it consistently. And that makes it kind of tough for a person to get their traction when they're trying to, make a way into the music business. So I think you've done a very good job with all of that.
Thank you.
What, as far as that's your influences, but how about your fan base? What do you, because I'd be kind of curious as I was listening to it, I thought, okay, I dig it. I get it, but I would imagine you probably have a pretty diverse fan base that comes out to your gigs and such. Do you not?
Yeah, it's interesting. Of course, I haven't played shows for a while, since 2020. Hopefully we'll get the guys together and play again soon. But what I love about like Apple Music and Spotify, you have your own artist profile that you can log into and see these statistics and like who's listening, what age group, male or female, where are they located. So I was just looking yesterday, and the biggest age group I think is 35 to 45.
Wow.
Mostly males. But then, you of course have other listeners as well, I suppose up to like 55 and maybe as young as, I don't know, 21 maybe, or teens, perhaps. But, primarily, I suppose in the 30-year range, 30 years old, 30, 40 years. The locations, of course, primarily in the United States and Europe, I suppose more specifically England. Of course, Canada, and then, throughout Europe, Portugal and Spain and Russia. So, but yeah, it's interesting just to see where all these people are listening around the world. I love how they can capture all that information.
Yeah. It's almost scary. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Well, I'm intrigued by the demographics, though, that you gave there, because it kind of goes to, and I've talked about this with a lot of other artists, clearly I think you've got the right description on there, in my opinion, but you definitely have that foundational structure there of let's just put it very broadly as classic rock, but with all those other genres that kind of support that main label. Yeah. But yet with and you would automatically assume that guys, you're a bit younger than me, but from your age up to a little bit older than me would fit and gravitate towards that classic rock umbrella. But the age groups you're mentioning, that's our kids and maybe grandkids, speaking for my age group. I'm turning 63 this week. And so to me, I'm seeing this, this move here of where the younger generations, they may criticize a baby boomer demographic, but they sure do love our sound. And what do you attribute that to?
Yeah, incidentally, happy birthday a little early.
Well, thank you.
Awesome. Got big plans to celebrate?
Nah, they all look the same to me. So
okay. So, it's interesting because I found that to be true as well. Like a lot of younger people in their 20s rediscovering classic rock. I'm absolutely amazed. My brother's son, he's early 20s. Mm-hmm. He's got a band playing 50s rock music. They absolutely love 50s rock, and they do it well. I never would have guessed that, but here these 20-something kids are just all about 50s rock. I've seen some of their shows, and man, they're playing like Buddy Holly and Elvis and all the early stuff, and I think as you mentioned a little bit earlier too, with the internet, people can hear anything. Like on Spotify, you dial up any song, or on YouTube. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of these kids are rediscovering the classic rock because I mean, that's some amazing stuff. The ingredients that went into those kind of songs, like, Led Zeppelin or Queen, like Stairway to Heaven or Bohemian Rhapsody. I hate to sound, like an old fogey when I say this, but it's like they don't write them like that anymore.
They don't.
Rarely
will you find a new group that can. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I'm just speaking like by and large in the mainstream.
Sure.
Obviously there is a lot of amazing, music being written out there, but I haven't come across it yet. I know it's out there certainly, but by and large, the mainstream is so interesting. I watched this documentary recently, and it was talking about Spotify, how they play songs based on algorithms. And there are actually songwriters, I imagine for some of the pop artists, how they have a team of like 12 people writing songs for them. They write songs based on these algorithms, what's popular. So they write a song to fit the algorithms of Spotify so that it'll kick into the big playlists and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wait a minute. I mean, Robert Plant and Jimmy Page didn't have that in mind when they were writing Stairway to Heaven. It came from the heart, and so, yeah, it's a whole new ballgame, but I kind of digress from your question there.
No, it plays right in, actually, because I do think that there's, I mean, to a certain extent over the years, especially back in the 60s, you had those fake groups. I mean, I remember several years ago, I interviewed Ron Dante. Well, he was the voice for the Archies.
Oh, cool.
He did the male voices on there. And
cool.
He was in a couple of other, what would, I guess we'd call it a boy band, but he was like, he was the same voice behind these different bands. And then, of course, he went on to record the first or produce the first 4 or 5 Barry Manilow albums, which, of course, were, huge, huge hits. But, back then you had the studios and the labels being the tastemakers, if you will. And now we're, it's algorithms and artificial intelligence that is create, and it's kind of scary. I mean, at what point do the musicians go away and we just listen to whatever the computer tells us to listen to, which I'm a bit concerned about. Maybe not for my generation, but for the younger ones, they may not know what it was like to see a real band and hear those stories of how they had to take a tone arm and keep going back on the record to learn, guitar riffs and such.
Yeah.
But tell me about your last couple of releases here. As far as, I mean, you went into some of how you put it together and such, but typically for each of the last 2, what was the timeline? How long did it take you to put it together? And what's been the feedback you've gotten from them so far?
Yeah. So this one here, I don't know if the camera can pick that up. Before the Day is Through. Yeah. That's the one that I was talking about a little earlier. During the pandemic, I'm thrilled. A couple of the songs have won awards, indie music awards.
Mm-hmm.
The Lit Talent Awards, I think it is, awarded this Best Alternative Rock Album for 2022. This podcast, a fellow that I've known for quite a while over in Portugal, he's got a podcast, music blog. He also awarded this, Best Album of 2022. Mm-hmm. So I'm really thrilled about that. Hollywood Music Awards awarded one of the songs on here, The Other Side. Nominated it for Best Alternative Song. So it's been wonderful, the recognition with that, some fantastic reviews. And earlier this year, I released the album, or the EP, I should say, One Breath Away, which I thank you. You've got on your backdrop there, the blue one. 4 songs on that. One of the songs called Moment by Moment just last week won 2 awards.
Wow.
The World's Songwriting Awards. They're based out of Australia. Top finalist for Best Alternative Song. And then the Global Music Awards awarded it the Bronze Award for Best Alternative Song. They do, like, some of these awards will do like gold, silver, bronze, kind of like the Olympics. So I got bronze. So very pleased with that. So great reviews, lots of radio play, a lot of the indie stations. Some of the songs have been in the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
So very, very pleased with that.
So for those that are not familiar with you, which song would you point to from which album that says, look, this is, if you like how this song sounds, you're really going to like the rest of my work. What song from which album would you point to on that?
Boy, that's a good question. I'm probably going to have to say the song "A Taste of Heaven."
Mm-hmm.
I recorded that one way back 2013, I think it was. Kind of a long story on that one, but I worked with a producer. I flew out to LA, did the vocal parts there. He brought in some amazing session players, got a guitar player from Alanis Morissette,
Wow.
Session drummer who's played with some big names. So he put together an astounding team of musicians. Again, I flew out to his studio in LA. We recorded everything and he put it all together. The guy who mixed it works at CBS Records, and he's worked with like Bob Dylan and some amazing names. So he did a fantastic job. That song was kind of the launch for me, basically. When I released that song, it got so much attention. Everybody loved it. It was winning awards and topping indie charts. So I would probably point to that song as a start. And then from there, wow, it'd be hard to say. so many. I guess maybe after that, I'd say have a listen to Before the Day is Through, this one here, just because, it's got like 13 songs on it. Kind of a variety. I've got a lot of orchestration on the songs, which I love, adding layers, a lot of harmonies and stuff. I actually do a cover of Led Zeppelin's Thank You. So, which also won an award, Red Carpet Music Awards out of Holland.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'd say that one, the whole album next.
Well, I noticed, first of all, with your songwriting and, both lyrically and musically, there's a tremendous depth to it. It's not, if I was to write a song, I'd be doing good to come up with, It's a Bitsy Spider or something, but, and sometimes I'll get sent music and I'm thinking they weren't ready for prime time yet, and not that I'm the sum total of all wisdom and knowledge when it comes to music, but I do know at least what I like and don't like. Right. So, hey, great minds think alike here. I see,
Oh, hey, really?
That's
Same
right.
thing?
Cheers.
Awesome.
Limoncello, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
all right. Isn't that funny?
I hope they're watching, right?
Yeah. You get them as a sponsor now.
There you go. But with your work, at least, and I've listened to quite a bit of it, there's a depth, there's a maturity in the songwriting and in the arrangements. And I know you can attribute some of that to who you've brought in with you, but they had to work with something. And that means that they had good material to work with and, and then your own talent in singing and performing it. So, that's what I think carries you very well and what will continue to carry you and lift you further up that food chain of musicians and recording artists. But I, when I say the depth, it's not just lyric and music, but it's also subject matter. And so there's, you capture the human heart, the human element of life, all those kinds of things very well. One that I heard that kind of made my ears perk up a little bit. I wanted to ask you about it was One Life to Live from the In the Light album.
Oh, yeah.
What's the story? To me, I don't know what your background is or anything, but to me, it kind of came across as for lack of a better way of putting it, but like a Christian song or, church song. I was raised in church and, I'm a believer in all that. So I have a very, I know what I'm talking about when I say it sounds like. Alice Cooper's I Am Made of You had the same vibe to it. And I asked him about it and he said, yeah, man. In fact, the church even recorded it. So
wow.
I wanted to ask you about One Life to Live and the story behind it.
Yeah. So that one I wrote, I'm thinking back in like 2008, I actually put it out on one of my first albums. But back then I was just kind of learning, audio recording in my home studio. And I really wanted to do that song much, much better, kind of more like maybe a Foo Fighters with the heavier guitars and stuff, So, but the subject matter, quite simply, yes, I did extract from that passage in the Bible where, this the feeding of the 5,000. A boy comes with, what is it, a fish and a couple loaves of bread. I apologize, I don't remember the exact count of each. It was just a couple of each, really.
You came with not much.
Not much, exactly. And so he didn't have much, but, he gave it to Jesus. Of course, Jesus broke it, blessed it, fed the multitude, which, of course, is an incredible miracle. But kind of bringing it home, sort of like boots on the ground, you and me, people in general, I wanted to kind of draw that story and say, look, there's a hurting world out there. There's a lot of people that are broke and busted. My family, we used to minister at a homeless shelter once a month. We get down and sing and just, give a message sometimes. And so it was a wonderful outreach. And it was a real eye-opener to, these people. I mean, afterward, I'd be meeting with them and talking. It's like, tell me your story. How did you get here? So, I have a real heart for homeless people, food shelters, things like that. So the song, is basically saying, look, you don't have to give $1 million, to help people. Just give what you got. $5, because a lot of times people might think, well, what possible good can I do? I don't have a lot of extra money. I might have $5, but what good is that? So they don't even bother giving $5. But let's just say you got 1 million people who all gave $5. So that's $5 million, and that's a significant impact for stocking the shelves of a food shelter or helping a homeless ministry or something. So that's really the story in the song. It's like, I don't have much to give, but what I have is yours. Kind of like a selfless life, I want to give what I can, and just creating the bridge between people. I think one of the lines is, one hand reaches out, another grabs to take, creating a bridge. So basically, it's not really about the money. It's like creating a bridge, between somebody who has maybe a good job, a home, and food on the table, creating a bridge with somebody who doesn't have that, or is hurting. I'm always amazed at the statistics, how many people go to food shelves, even here in Minnesota. I consider Minnesota a very well-to-do state, and yet it's staggering the number of people that can barely put food on the table. So, my family, we've always been giving to food shelves and again, homeless shelters, just what we can. And it doesn't matter the amount, just give what you can, a little bit. I always encourage people to get involved with some kind of charities, local, regional, and even international, just give. It makes you feel good.
Yeah. Two things about that I certainly didn't have this written down to share or anything, but in this time, it seems like the world's so divided.
Oh, yeah.
So polarized, and it's sad. And I don't think it started just with this administration or the last. I think it goes back quite a ways. It just got incrementally worse,
True.
But two things about giving. One is when it comes to stuff, I worked and helped out with a local ministry here that had a kind of a resale store. And Kevin, it was embarrassing to me to see what people would bring to give. I mean, it's one thing to give and to give all you got, but it was disappointing to me the level that people tried to treat a thrift store as a dump.
Yeah.
Yeah, they should have taken the stuff to the dump. Don't impact people's self-esteem by bringing junk, and so that changed how I looked at things, because I needed to look, if I was getting rid of something, I was going to say, well, how come I'm not going to wear that anymore? If it looks that bad, throw it away.
Yep.
Don't expect someone else to be proud to look as bad as I would wearing that thing. But on the flip side of that, I'll use a story. And again, this is about you, not me, but I want to share this to support what
absolutely.
You just shared.
Yeah.
I have a friend who I won't even say what gender they are, but they are going through a very tough time right now. And family life is less than desirable, things of that nature. And this person does a lot of helping of people. And it stunned me to see that person's smile was so magnetic, but yet in talking to them, realizing what they're going through. And sometimes I call it giving out of our need. Sometimes if my need's financial, I might look to help somebody financially.
Yeah.
To your point, that's even if it's a little bit, if it's all I can do, to me, it's like, well, I'm feeling this way. Someone else must be. I will do my part to help. And it's not keeping score or anything. It's just something innate in there. But even just to give a smile to somebody, because to smile at somebody is sharing your good day with somebody that may be having a bad one. And that giving can range from the smile all the way up to millions of dollars. And whatever it is, we're blessed to be able to give. That's what we should do. And it should be the best we can give, not our throwaways.
Absolutely. Yeah, like a word of encouragement doesn't cost you anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I asked you about that song, because it touched me. And I was really struck by the depth of the meaning of that song, in addition to how well the lyrics were articulated there. So
thank you.
So what's on your radar for the next few months? What you got planned?
Oh boy. I've been working on some older songs. It's interesting. There's this music publishing licensing place out of England. We stayed in touch for a while, and they're interested in a couple songs that I recorded on cassette tape.
I remember
so I
those.
cleaned those up as best I could. Kind of a long story how I got them. They're looking for songs recorded back in the 80s and 90s. And it's like, well, all I've got is stuff on cassette tape if you want to listen. It's like, yeah, okay. So I burned it on, my computer, sent it over, and it's like, hey, we like a couple of these songs here. So I've been, enhancing the sound and cleaning those up a little bit. But I got to thinking, I've got a ton of songs from back then that would, maybe make for a nice album release, just, some old acoustic things and stuff. So that's kind of what I just started doing here this last week. Among other plans, of course, I want to get back to playing live gigs again. There's nothing that compares with that. So, reach out to the guys and fire up the engines and, get out there and play. So winter is approaching here in Minnesota. I'm not much for the snow and cold and the dark. So I usually use that time to stay in and write songs and record. So I'm probably going to be doing a lot of that over the winter as well. So I've always got something to do,
Yep. Well, good deal. Well, when you have that album ready, let me know. We'll do another one of these, and we'll let people know about it and promote. So for, let's say, a year or two down the road, what do you hope to be doing at that time?
There was a lot of interest for a European tour a couple of years ago that all fizzled out. I'd like to revisit that, and just start doing some major touring. Obviously to see, album sales as well, continue more recording, but I'd really love to see that. That's something that I haven't done as of yet. We came really close a couple of times, but there's so many moving parts that have to fall into place. Yeah. I was working with a management company that had some offices over in Europe, and they were coordinating everything. And long story, and that's kind of one of the reasons we took this hiatus. I had the band going, and things, a lot of things. We kind of had our own little perfect storm where everything kind of fell apart. And I had to step back and just kind of reassess everything. And so, but yeah, that's something I would absolutely love to do.
Well, good deal. Well, I bet you it happens.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But Matt, Kevin, this was fun. I'm glad we got to meet. And
yeah, me too, Randy.
And I look forward to sharing your story with everybody. And let's stay in touch. We've got each other's emails, and we can keep each other apprised of what's going on. But when it gets close to the next album getting ready to come out, let's talk about a month or so before that, and we'll do one of these and get everything ready so that when the album lands, we'll pop our chat out there and help drive it some. Okay,
you're on, Randy. You got it. Thank you.
Well, listen, stay well and enjoy the winter while you're working and creating things, and we'll continue to stay in touch.
Sounds good. Thank you, Randy. Bless you.
Take care, Kevin. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.